Well, congratulations, everybody. You made it to hump day. You are halfway through the work week. 2 more days till the weekend, and relax and do whatever you're going to do on the weekend. You've made it this far, only a little bit to go. Now, for me, I get my days mixed up and kind of mushed together because I do the same thing over and over. So I literally, like I do every day, had to look at my phone to see what day of the week it was. It is indeed. I checked. I made sure 100%. It is Wednesday. It is hump day. Get It Gang is really on it this week. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've named the group of people that leave video ideas in my comments in my regular videos, and they are called the Get It Gang. Why did I come up with that name? Well, because they help me get it, and they get what I'm trying to do here. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand. But golden Bluetooth, that's never going to happen. Golden Bluetooth, why are you talking about that? Golden Bluetooth this, golden Bluetooth that. Those people that leave the video ideas, and I've been doing it days now, at least 4 or 5 days. And you guys, listen, I'm going to be honest. The off season is tough for a college football YouTuber to come up with content, especially you add on the fact that people that watch college football, they lose interest in the off season. It happens. It's part of the drill. In fact, as a college football YouTuber, when you're trying to figure out if your channel is doing good, growing, doing what it's supposed to do, you don't compare what you've done this month or last month, the month of January, let's say, to what you were doing in July, August, September, October, November, December, because you would get discouraged because the numbers do go down. It is a fact. They do go down. The way to correctly determine if the channel is on the right track is you compare how you're doing this month as to how you were doing this month last year, February to February, March to March, April to April, and so on and so forth. And I did that today because you do get down, man. The views are, I mean, we're not doing bad. I'm not saying that. We're not doing bad. We're doing good. But the views are lower because it's the off season. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to check and see how we were doing this time last year. Yes, the channel is growing. The channel is doing way better than I ever thought it would in the amount of time that we're talking about. So shout out to everybody that's watching right now, that watch my regular videos, that's hit the subscribe button, that comment in the comment section, that hit the like button, that hits the super chat, that tells a friend, that shares the video. It is because of you that this channel is growing. I am just the voice and the face of Golden Bluetooth. You guys are the engine of Golden Bluetooth. So I felt it necessary to give you guys a shout out and to tell you that I really appreciate you guys, because without you, there is no Golden Bluetooth. Let's just be honest. Without you guys watching, there is no Golden Bluetooth. Quick reminder before we go on any further, please hit the like button. It's easy, simple, fast, and free. And even if you're not watching this live, if you're watching a replay of this, still, please hit the like button, because it's the likes and the comments that tell YouTube, hey, people are interested in this video. Let's suggest it more. So we greatly appreciate it. If you have a comment, question, a troll attempt, you want to make fun of me, I'm easy to make fun of, let's be honest, and you want to support the channel, hit the super chat button. It's that little dollar sign that you see on the bottom right-hand corner. Anything you put in that super chat, even if you're making fun of me, goes on the screen just like you see there. My title, Bluetooth. In fact, let me change that up real quick. Give me a second. That is my P.O. Box. 10 gear to represent your team in my background forever. And as you can see, we have plenty of college football gear. I counted today. We have over 60 mini helmets. You guys have blown me away. We've tried this twice. I don't know if y'all realize this. We've tried this twice. First go around 2021 college football season, I tried the P.O. Box. I got one or two things. All right, so saved up again, decided to try it again in August. Hopefully a little bit more interaction, way more interaction. Just absolutely steamrolled me. So shout out to you guys for sending gear to represent your team. I mean, it's amazing how the viewers and subscribers make this channel. It is, I mean, literally my background. That's y'all. That is y'all. And a lot of stuff you don't even see because we're still doing the remodel. So this is going to be closed in. The shelving is going to go all the way to the edge of that door. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach a shelf directly to the wall from one side of the wall, the other side of the wall, and that will be our top 25 wall. AP poll, playoff poll. I guess we have to do AP poll to start off the season because the playoff poll don't come out till like week 8, week 9, something like that. So yes, we will even have the poll shelf up there as well. Hillbilly Skeptic, a great contributor to Going to Blue. Appreciate your $10 super chat, your donation. He says, can you do one about the teams the SEC would need to form a super conference which dominates football and basketball? I see what you did there. That doesn't spread beyond Kansas to the north and Texas to the west. Dude, duh. I got you. Yeah. I think you're hinting at something. I think that you would really like the SEC to grab Kansas. I think you said beyond Kansas on purpose. And the reason you mentioned Kansas is because of basketball. Hillbilly Skeptic is a Kentucky fan, and we all know that Kentucky has dominated the SEC when it comes to basketball. But usually whenever Kentucky's down, so is the SEC. Now, Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee have kind of picked up the mantle this year because Kentucky, I mean, they're not bad this year, but they're not elite like they usually are. So he's trying to make it – he wants it to where the conference is strong both in football and basketball. And I totally get that. Can there be a conference that can claim that? Because the Big 12 is solid in basketball. Solid. 100% solid. But football, we're okay. I think the Big 12 is deep in football, but we don't have those elite brands at the top like, the SEC has Georgia and Alabama, and Tennessee is looking good. South Carolina did well. Kentucky's had a few good years under Mark Stoops. We'll see if Florida can come back. I think the surprise team, and I've done this hot take before, I think the surprise team in the SEC in 2023 is going to be Texas A&M. I'm telling you, they have a new offensive coordinator. They still have all the talent in the world. Their schedule is going to be much more doable. I think Texas A&M is a team to watch out for in the SEC West. In fact, I have them finishing as high as second place. I think they'll challenge Alabama for that first spot in the SEC. What about the drama going on at Alabama? They interviewed Grubb, the offensive coordinator from Washington, which was a great interview, but it turns out it didn't work out. I don't know if Grubb turned down Alabama or Alabama turned down Grubb. Whatever the case may be, it didn't work out. Personally, I think that would have been a home run hire. In fact, whenever I did the video on Alabama, Nick Saban looking for an offensive coordinator, he was high on the list. Question is, there is one question about Grubb. And the reason I keep saying Grubb is I completely forgot about his first name. I can't remember it off the top of my head. So if you know it, tell me in the comments section. Sometimes you have a brain fart live, and I'm using my phone, so I can't look it up. Anyways, the question with Grubb is, was it him that produced such a great offense, or was it Michael Penix Jr.? Because this was his first year as the offensive coordinator at Washington, but at the same time, it was the first year that Michael Penix Jr. was the starting quarterback at Washington. And if you've watched Going to Blue Dude for the past season, you know that I predicted Washington to make a major step forward, having a 10-win season because of Michael Penix Jr. And I thought their defense was going to be solid, and that's exactly what happened. Why they lost to Arizona State, I have no idea. I've said it before, but I had to say it again. Washington, if they had beaten Arizona State like they should have, for whatever reason, they let losing to UCLA beat them twice. That's what happened. They lost to UCLA, and then they turned around and lost to Arizona State. It happens, but it shouldn't have happened. If that didn't happen, had their only loss been to UCLA, it would have been a one-loss Washington versus a one-loss USC. Winner gets into the playoffs. That's what would have happened. But instead, they lose to Arizona State. Utah gets into the Pac-12 championship. And, of course, Utah beats USC in the Pac-12 championship. Problem is, Utah has 3 losses in the regular season, and therefore the Pac-12 is denied yet again. Something I wanted to talk about in this video is coast-to-coast conferences. Coast-to-coast conferences. We already have one. It's a fact. We already have a coast-to-coast conference. It is the Big Ten. Their easternmost teams are Maryland and Rutgers. Those are East Coast teams for sure, especially Rutgers. They're very close to the East Coast. And now they have USC and UCLA. So they have stretched from the East Coast all the way out to the West Coast. That's going to take some adjustment for USC. I'm not saying USC is going to be bad in the Big Ten, but they're not going to be successful like they were this year, the first year under Lincoln Riley. I'm thinking more like 8-4, 9-3 type of seasons until they actually get used to that travel. It will affect them, okay? It will affect them. I actually think it will help them recruiting because all of a sudden they're going to have a presence on the east side of the United States. So it will help them in recruiting. But as far as traveling, scheduling, and actually playing in the Big Ten, they will have to adjust. Okay. So the Big Ten is coast to coast. We know that. What about other conferences that can go coast to coast? Pac-12. Nope, not happening. Now, there for a while, we knew that the Pac-12 and the ACC were talking about either a merger or an alliance, something like that. Now, if the Pac-12 and the ACC were to merge into one super conference, then yes, that would be a coast to coast conference. But those talks have fallen apart. And if you really think about it, I think those two conferences would mesh quite well. I mean, they're both high on academics for the most part. I think culturally there is a little bit of a divide. But overall, I think the Pac-12 would fit together with the ACC well. That's just my opinion. Now, the travel would be a little ridiculous because there is a gap between the Pac-12 and the ACC. There is a gap. It's called the Big 12. The Big 12 is the gap between the Pac-12 and the ACC. So they had to figure that out. So it's possible, but I really don't see it being doable. So I think the Pac-12 is off the table because they're not going to have anything to do with the Big 12. They don't really have that much in common. Of course, the Big 10, they're not going to bring everybody in. The SEC, they're not going to bring anybody in. So I think the Pac-12 is off the table when you're talking about a possible coast-to-coast conference. So let's see. Big 10 already coast to coast. Pac-12 off the table. What about the ACC? That's very interesting. Very interesting. But I don't think that they would be able to generate enough interest and enough revenue to get the attention from teams from Pac-12. Because the bottom line is, with those other 3 conferences, with the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC, they need to draw the interest of those teams from the Pac-12, because the ACC picking up teams from the Big 12, that's not going to help. I mean, it'll stretch them. It might help, their brand and their revenue, but it won't get them to the West Coast. So both of those conferences need teams out of the Pac-12 if they want to stretch coast to coast. Not just any teams, because some of the teams in the Pac-12 wouldn't qualify. Let's say the ACC or the Big 12 grabs Utah and Colorado. Okay, that stretches you a little bit. With the Big 12, it doesn't even stretch them at all because they're bringing in BYU. That already stretched them to the state of Utah. So they're just adding more teams in their region. For the ACC, it would stretch them a little past the Rockies. That's about it. That's still not coast to coast. Okay, what about Arizona State? Okay, that stretches them a little further. Even with the Big 12, stretches them a little bit further. That's still not coast to coast. So it comes down to 4 teams when you really think about it. 4 teams that could determine if the ACC, the Big 12, or even the SEC can go coast to coast. Now, I would kind of take the SEC off the board as well because I don't think the SEC is interested in stretching that far west. At the same time, I thought the same thing about the Big 10. I was wrong about the Big 10. I could be wrong about the SEC. Having said that, the only teams that I think the SEC would be interested as far as value and at least staying south are taken off the board, and that's USC and UCLA. Maybe, and this is just a theory, I have nothing to prove this. Yeah, I'm not even saying it happened, but I'm just saying this is a big maybe. Maybe at one point in time, the SEC was interested in UCLA and USC because seriously, those are the only two teams that I could possibly see the SEC even being remotely interested in as far as stretching all the way out to the West Coast. I don't think they ever were. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying maybe. It's something to think about. It's just something to think about. So that's off the board. I just don't think it's in the cards for the SEC. I don't think that Washington or Oregon is a big enough draw for the SEC for them to stretch all the way out west. I don't think they would add enough revenue to where, it's not just adding more pieces of the pie, adding actually to the pie. Whenever you're looking at teams, you want teams that actually add to the pie, not just become more pieces of the pie. You got to split the money more ways. I don't think Washington and Oregon do that for the SEC. The SEC. I think they would do that for the ACC. So could the ACC be interested in Washington and Oregon? It's possible. Academically, Washington and Oregon would fit in well in the ACC. Culturally, not so much. But I think they would look past that. I really do. And on top of that, the ACC's TV revenue is so low that I actually do think that Oregon and Washington would add value to that. Now, if we were talking about SEC or Big Ten money, obviously no. I just stated that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the Big Ten turned them down. They took USC and UCLA, and they said no thanks to Oregon and Washington because they don't add enough to the pie to where it's not just adding more pieces to cut to the pie. They're actually adding to the pie. Same thing with the SEC. But for the ACC, the TV deal was so low that, yes, I do think that Washington and Oregon would add enough value to where it would be feasible for the ACC to go out and get them. John Waffle H2P, thank you for the $4.99 donation. I really appreciate it. Says Pitt beats Blue Blood Carolina. W can't even beat Little Fort Worth Baptist College. What a joke! That's a bad comparison. If you were going to trash talk West Virginia, wouldn't you just refer to the fact that West Virginia lost to Pitt in the backyard brawl? That would have been my go-to because TCU made the national championship. And it took a touchdown throw in the last 20 seconds for TCU to actually beat West Virginia. They were only up, I think it was by 3 or 4 points with 20 seconds left, and it was a third down. Had they not converted, West Virginia has one last gasp. But Max Duggan throws a touchdown and seals the deal. So West Virginia was very competitive. I'm not arguing your point as far as Pitt being the better team. Obviously, Pitt was better than West Virginia last year, beat us head-to-head, had a better record. But that particular comment, a little bit of a head-scratcher. That's all I'm going to say, a little bit of a head-scratcher. I would have gone with, we beat you head-to-head, we're better than you. That would have been the trash talk that I would have went with. Talking basketball, we beat you head-to-head. West Virginia beat Pitt head-to-head, so now I'm really confused. And North Carolina is not very good this year. And TCU is actually a good basketball team. They're a top 20 team in basketball. So now I'm completely lost with your trash talk. But keep trying. I'll try to make sense of whatever you're trying to say. And you made me go off on a rabbit trail, and my train of thought is a little off. Let me collect myself. All right, we're talking about the ACC getting Oregon and Washington. Back to business. I don't see any reason why the ACC shouldn't try to go out and get them. Now, the problem with that, though, is would Washington and Oregon want to do that because of the grant of rights? Grant of rights. John Waffle, 16-7. What are you? Okay. Anyways, I'm super lost. If you would have typed in 13-9, I would have gotten that. Anyways. Oregon and Washington going to the ACC. I guess it depends on how dire the situation is for the Pac-12, because Oregon and Washington wanting unequal revenue share is not good for the Pac-12. I understand the rationale behind Oregon and Washington wanting the unequal revenue share, more money than all the other teams. They are the best brands. They are the most valuable brands. And I would understand the rationale of the Pac-12 wanting to grab that because or meet their needs, because they are the biggest brands and they don't want to lose Oregon and Washington. But here's the thing. Oh, you were talking about Pitt's record. Well, the ACC is not very good. You're 16-7 in a bad conference. West Virginia stomped you head to head. So try to get your facts straight, buddy. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Oregon and Washington to the ACC. So the unequal revenue share, that could really, really hurt the Pac-12. I understand they're wanting to keep Oregon and Washington happy, but if they take a step back and see that Oregon and Washington really doesn't have any options, because I don't see them wanting to sign that horrible grant of rights for the ACC. The Big Ten has already turned them down. In fact, as I've stated in my videos several times, if they do an unequal revenue share and give Oregon and Washington more money than everybody else, it could actually backfire and hurt the Pac-12, because those four corner schools, or as I like to call them, 3/4 of the four corner schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, are going to be like, screw that. No, we understand that they're more valuable brand, but we need to make just as much money. I mean, we're four teams. They're just two. If we go, then that's almost half of the remaining Pac-12. And that's exactly what could happen. If they give Oregon and Washington unequal revenue share, the four corners can be like, up, peace, see ya, we're off to the Big 12. That could be that last nudge that those four teams need to go to the Big 12. And then what happens? Then the Pac-12 is down to 6 members, and per the NCAA bylaws, if a conference gets down to 6 members, they must add more members or disband. And we all know that the Pac-12 does not want to add Mountain West teams, but that would be their only choice. And whenever it gets down to that scenario, Oregon and Washington are like, nope, we're out as well. And then Oregon and Washington are off to the Big 12. And all of a sudden, the Pac-12 is down to 4 teams, and they're having to backfill with the Mountain West. So I would not give Oregon and Washington unequal revenue share, not because I don't think that they're the best brands or the most valuable brands, because they are, and not because I don't think that they would deserve it, because they do. But the bottom line is that could be a death knell for the Pac-12. It really could. Jason M., thank you for the $2 donation. Says, hail to the victors, valiant. Hail to Michigan. Yes, that is Michigan does have one of the all-time great fight songs. I will have to say that. And I do have a lot of Michigan subscribers. You're climbing up there with the Georgia subscribers. I'm going to go back and look at my subscribers and see who I have the most. I'm pretty sure it's still Georgia. But I'm telling you, Michigan is definitely, or as I like to call them, Michigan is definitely making some noise on Gold and Bluted. So I'm going to do that. I'd be very interested to see that. But anyways, so I highly advise the Pac-12 to not do that. Do not give Oregon and Washington unequal revenue share, simply because keep the four corner schools happy. Because if they leave, it's all over. It is all over. So we'll see this new TV deal, and we'll see if the Pac-12 decides to give unequal revenue share to Oregon and Washington, because if that happens, it is over. And, you know, the other part of that I haven't talked about is, okay, I said the four corners going to the Big 12 because they're not happy about the unequal revenue share. Yes. And then Oregon and Washington looking around saying, we're out to the Big 12. That can happen. Or they bounce to the ACC. That's how the ACC could get Oregon and Washington. Light bulb, it just came to me. That is how the ACC could get Oregon and Washington. So if you're a fan of a team in the ACC and you want your team to stay in the ACC and you want the ACC to stick around, you might actually want to hope that the Pac-12 does give unequal revenue share to Oregon and Washington, because that could lead to a massive fallout. Colorado, Utah, Arizona State going to the Big 12, and then Oregon and Washington say, all right, ACC, the Pac-12 is falling apart. We're not going down with the ship. We're coming. Because it would be down to the ACC and the Big 12, because the Big 10, they don't want Washington and Oregon. They don't. They don't. I don't know if it has something to do with USC and UCLA. They're like, please don't bring them in. We'll come if you promise us. Because legally, they can't put it in the contract. I found that out the other day. That would be antitrust. So they get sued. So it can't be in the contract. But will you pretty please promise us with the cherry on top that if we come into the Big Ten, that you won't bring in Oregon and Washington? If you give us a pinky promise and say that you won't bring in Oregon and Washington, we will come to the Big Ten. Maybe something like that. I don't know. And then I'm also hearing, no, it was Ohio State. Ohio State said, no, we're stopping. We're stopping with 16. That's it for now, unless the SEC makes another move. I don't know the actual reason. The reason, I don't know. But the fact remains, Big Ten turned them down. It happened. Turned them down. And I don't think they'll end up in the Big Ten. So their choices will be down to the Big 12 or the ACC. And it might come down to that decision as to if the Pac-12 gives them unequal revenue share. And I see the Arizona fan in the chat, Sal Carmona. Did I say that correctly? Carmona. I like that. Arizona fan here. We want to join the Big 12. I'm actually hearing that more and more. Do you think it will happen? I actually do think it will happen. I just don't know how it will happen. I don't know if it's just going to be a straight up negotiation or if it's going to be a reaction to the Pac-12 kissing the rear end of Oregon and Washington. Either way, yes, I do see it happening. Time frame, I would say probably within the next 2 years. Maybe even sooner. It just depends on the TV deal, because the Pac-12 still doesn't have a TV deal. Not even for I might be wrong about this, but I don't even think for 2023. When does their current TV deal expire? Is it 25, 24, or is it this year? I don't know. But I know they don't have a new TV deal. So that has to get locked in for anything else to happen. And at 2024, Katie, thank you. So they're negotiating that now. They're trying to lock it down now. They don't want to wait till the midnight hour, because the longer the Pac-12 waits, or not waits, the longer it takes, then the worse the situation is going to get. That's just the bottom line. The longer they take to get the TV deal, the worse it's going to be. I mean, they're talking about a partnership with Amazon. I'm not saying that nobody watches Amazon, but I don't know a lot of people that watch college football or any sports on Amazon. I don't. Maybe there's some people in the chat that do. And I've heard that the presentation that Amazon gave as far as presenting the NFL to fans was terrible. I don't know, because I don't watch Amazon TV. So I really don't understand that TV deal. And don't get me wrong, I do think that streaming will go mainstream. I do think eventually that streaming will be the way to watch any type of sports in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe even sooner. I do think that streaming is the future of watching sports. I do. But not Amazon. I don't think Amazon is the way to go. I don't think it's the right avenue. I think if you're going to go with streaming, I think you need to look into the ESPN packages, what they stream. I think you need to look into Netflix, Hulu, if they can do it. I mean, a lot of people have, basically everybody I know, seriously, basically everybody I know has Hulu or Netflix. Put it to you this way: if somebody watches, stuff online or stream stuff, 9 times out of 10 they're going to have Netflix and Hulu. That is the route they need to go if they're going to go through the streaming networks. And there's no bidding war for the Pac-12. Fox bowed out. They want to pay attention to the Big Ten and the Big 12, and ESPN is just sitting there going, "Oh man, we can get this at a good price." High-fiving each other. ACC all over again, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Let's rake these guys over the coals. So I don't get it. And the ACC, I know it was John Swafford, it wasn't Jim Phillips, but my gosh, what a terrible, terrible negotiator he was. Grand rights of 23-6, massive buyouts, and the revenue per school, not good. Not good. Let me, my screen for some, hold, give me a second, guys. All right, there we go. I had to flip out and flip back in because I hit the comments, and for whatever reason, my screen shrunk. Hopefully, it didn't shrink on your side, but if it did, oh well, I'll just have to sneak up a little bit closer. Anyways, so Oregon and Washington, I could see going to the ACC, either reaction or, if they can show them more money. I don't know, because I think Oregon and Washington would move the needle enough to where the ACC would stretch out west. In fact, I don't think I've done a video on that. I'm gonna do a video on that because I think that is a very, I'm not gonna say likely scenario, but I think it's a very doable scenario. And I think it's the only way that the ACC stretches to a coast-to-coast conference as well. I don't think they're getting a Cal or Stanford because you're down to 4 teams as far as stretching coast-to-coast. It's either Washington, Oregon, Cal, or Stanford. That's it. Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah not going to get the job done. USC and UCLA off the board. So if we're strictly talking coast-to-coast, then it's going to be Washington or Oregon, or both, I should say, Washington and Oregon. Oregon State and Washington State, they're still in the mix, of course, but they are the lesser brands in the same state. Now, if the legislation goes through that ties Washington State to Washington, in other words, if you get Washington, you have to take Washington State, that could be a game changer as well. It's not necessarily a bad thing because Washington State is such an underrated brand and such an underrated fan base. They don't get talked about enough. They are a top 25 national fan base. They are one of the biggest fan bases remaining in the Pac-12, now the Pac-10, because there's 10 members. I know it's still called the Pac-12. I'm going to call it the Pac-10. So that's not a terrible deal, but that would be bad for Oregon. Really, really bad. People are not realizing this. If that state bill goes through that ties Washington and Washington State together, that is bad news for Oregon. Give me 1 second, guys. Hold on. I need to write something down before I forget about it. Because I literally came up with a couple of video ideas right here on the live show. And I don't want to forget it, so I'm writing it down. Give me 1 second. And I might do both of these tomorrow in the same day because I'm doing a couple of videos every day anyways. Let's see. I'm almost done. Give me a second, guys. So the video ideas that I wrote down are the ones that I had earlier about how Washington and Oregon could end up in the ACC, either reaction or just, they move the needle enough to where the ACC offers them, and Washington and Washington State getting tied together through state legislation. Bad for Oregon. So keep your eyes out for those video ideas. Thank you. Let me make sure I read your name right. Opie Deedon. Is it Opie Deedon or Opie Dedham? I'm going to pronounce your name correctly. Amazing, generous donation, $20 super chat. Appreciate you, buddy. Says, I am a huge college football fan and NFL guy as well. But choose college football over the NFL. Me too. I'm right there with you. But I only watched 2 Thursday night games the whole season. That's a good point because I'm in the same boat. I don't know if you're talking about NFL or college football. I'm talking about college football. I only watched 2 Thursday night games. One was it was West Virginia and was it Baylor? I think it was West Virginia, but it was a West Virginia game. Then the other game was an ACC game, I think. I think it was an ACC game. Not sure. So I only watched 2 Thursday night games as well. So they need to make that more appealing and put some, I don't know. If you're going to put college football on Thursday night, don't you need to have better matchups? I'm not saying the premier matchups. You want to save those for prime time on Saturday, but like second tier. And that's why I watched West Virginia Baylor. It was a good matchup, and it had my interest because I'm a West Virginia fan. But nationally, I don't think it was going to draw that much attention. I don't think it got a very good rating because, it was West Virginia versus Baylor. If you're going to try to make some money on a Thursday night, think about, I'm not talking about Michigan, Ohio State, or Notre Dame and Ohio State or something like that, but second tier, maybe, let's see, let's think of a Big 12 matchup that would be decent on a Thursday night. What about, I would be okay with Bedlam on a Thursday night. What about that? Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. That would be pretty cool. I'm sure Oklahoma and Oklahoma State fans are going to chew me out for that one. But I'm saying for a national interest, a second tier interesting game for a Thursday night game would be Oklahoma State. Because I don't know if y'all remember this, but back in the Big East days, we had Thursday night games, and they had massive, massive ratings because they put out important games. I remember the game in 2007 whenever USF upset West Virginia in Tampa, whenever we had one of our amazing years. That drew a lot of eyeballs, And it seems like the Big East had a knack for drawing in eyeballs because they put in premier matchups on Thursday night. I don't expect every conference to do that, but at least make an effort. Make an effort. Like these Virginia, Syracuse, nobody cares about that. Let's see who else. Louisville, Georgia Tech, nobody cares about that. I think they're relying on the fact, well, there's no other college football games on Thursday night, so they'll watch ours. We can put anybody up there and they'll watch it. No, that's not how it works. Just because you don't have any other college football competition on Thursday night doesn't mean that college football fans are going to watch that game. Even diehard college football fans. I'm a diehard college football fan, and I did not watch very many Thursday night games. 2 to be exact. 2. That's it. Because it didn't interest me. So no, that formula doesn't work. Just because you don't have competition on Thursday night doesn't mean you shouldn't try. That's not what that means. So if you're going to have the gusto to put college football on a Thursday night or whatever night you want to choose, give us a good matchup, please. Will indeed. Thank you for the $2 donation. It says Pac-12 needs good weeknight matchups to be relevant. That is a great point. And actually, I think you were reading my mind because that was the direction I was going in. Because the problem with Pac-12 is Pac-12 after dark. That's a draw. No, it's not. No, it's not. Unless you have, USC versus Oregon, Oregon versus Washington, Washington versus Utah, really good matchups. But there's only so many really good matchups. But there, an Arizona versus Cal, no, nobody's going to watch Pac-12 after dark for that. So putting that on a weekday night, that's not a bad idea. As long as the kickoff is for 7:30, which means for them it would be like a 3:30 or 4:30 kickoff type of thing, which is doable. That is doable. I like that idea, and I do think it would help the Pac-12 because they need help as far as getting national exposure. At one point in time, the time zones that the Pac-12 occupied was a benefit to the Pac-12. Now it's a detriment. It is used against them. Hey, don't go play for Washington. Nobody's going to ever see you on TV. NFL teams won't care because they won't know who you are. Hey, don't go play for Oregon because the viewership's not very high. You're not going to get any national exposure. Now they can use that as a recruiting tool against the Pac-12, whereas back in the day, they could actually use it for them. So the Pac-12 has got to figure out a way to where they can, use that to their benefit. And what Will Indeed just mentioned, that's not a bad idea. It really is not a bad idea. I would actually, it's at least worth a shot, right? Like, and some people said, no, that'll never work. You might be right. You might be right. It might not ever work, but you have to try stuff. And that's what I've been saying about the Pac-12. They have to try stuff. They have to make an effort and try to get some teams out of the Big 12. They have to add, if they can't get teams out of the Big 12, then they need to go out and get a Boise State, a San Diego State, and a Fresno State. Nobody else. Stay with 13. You don't have to have even numbers now that you don't have to have divisions. Stay with 13. But if the Pac-12 sits there and does nothing, they will get picked apart. And the Pac-12 would just be a part of history because it won't exist anymore. You got to do something. Instead of having this mindset, oh, that'll never work. Oh, we don't want to do that. Well, you sit around and that's the end of you. You have to try stuff. Even if you don't think it's going to work, you still have to give it a shot. So weeknight games for the Pac-12, give it a shot. You never know. It might help. You never know. It might help. The last conference that has a chance to go coast to coast is the Big 12. The Big 12 already has West Virginia and UCF. Those are their most eastern teams. Those are East Coast teams, especially UCF. They're in Florida. They're in Florida. That's East Coast team. So for the Big 12, everybody's talking about them adding the four corners. Yeah, that helps. But that doesn't get you coast to coast. For the Big 12 to get coast to coast, they would also need Washington and Oregon. I will say this. The scenario that I mentioned earlier, as far as the Pac-12 getting unequal revenue to Oregon and Washington, that could also benefit the Big 12 because they could get the four corners and Oregon and Washington. But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, it could run Oregon and Washington off to the ACC. So you don't want to rely on that. What I would be keeping an eye on, if you're a Big 12 fan and you want the Big 12 to go coast to coast, I would be keeping my eyes on the legislation that they're trying to pass connecting Washington and Washington State. If that happens, then your chances of going coast to coast go significantly up. Okay? Because I don't think the ACC would want to take Washington and Washington State. I don't think they would want to do that. They would be stretching their conference just for one state. I mean, we're talking about a big gap between the ACC, who's on the East Coast, and then one state, Washington. If they are going to go coast to coast, they're going to want to grab at least a couple of states. For the Big 12, they would absolutely be okay with grabbing both Washington and Washington State. Even though it's only one state, both of those are good brands. And like I mentioned earlier, Washington State is an underrated fan base. Top 25 national. Bigger than West Virginia's, which surprised me. I know. Why did that surprise you? West Virginia doesn't have a very, very big fan base. Well, West Virginia does have a top 30 fan base. Washington State has a top 25 fan base. So, yes, I actually think that if that bill passed, it would be in favor of the Big 12 because it would discourage the ACC. They would not want to stretch coast to coast just for one state. Big 10 is out. Nope. We're not doing that. And of course, SEC, that's not happening. That might lock it in, to be honest with you, because I don't think the Pac-12 is going to last unless they do something that nobody thinks they're going to do, and that's grab Mountain West teams. They need to do that, but they're not going to. So that state legislation tying Washington and Washington State together would be exactly what the Big 12 would want. It would discourage all these other conferences from grabbing Washington, Oregon, because now it's Washington and Washington State, and they don't want to do that because it's just one state. There you go, the Big 12, coast to coast. You would have your East teams, West Virginia and UCF. and then maybe some teams from the ACC. And then you'd have Washington and Washington State. And that's a pretty good looking conference. I like it. Um, I know a lot of people, including Big 12 fans, would prefer to have Washington and Oregon. I'm okay with Washington and Washington State. I could go either or. I actually don't prefer one over the other. I don't prefer Washington and Oregon over Washington State, nor do I prefer Washington and Washington State over Washington, Oregon. I'm okay either way. I'm just saying I do think it would benefit the Big 12 if they got tied together, because all those other conferences would be like, nope, I fold, I'm out. And then there's Oregon State, who I really, really feel bad for. I really do. I think if they don't try to get some type of state legislation passed to where they're tied to Oregon, then their future is going to be the Mountain West. Like, that is going to be your future unless the Pac-12 goes out and gets the Mountain West teams, which you would technically still be in the Pac-12, but it would basically be a majority of Mountain West teams, because you'd have to backload, because I see you losing at least 6 teams. It would be down to, well, it depends. It would be down to either Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, or Stanford, or if the legislation gets passed and it's Washington State, then the 4 remaining could be Oregon, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford. Another video I did just popped in my head. Hold on. Dadgummit, I can't believe that. Give me 1 second. I'm connecting ideas too, by the way. It's just how my brain works. This is one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel, because every time I had a conversation, whether it be with friends and family, it would always lead back to college football, and people were getting sick of it. It's a sickness, guys. It is a sickness. I fully admit it. It is a sickness. I'm obsessed with it. But I try to use it to my benefit. So there's like 4 video ideas right now because of the live show. Anyways, by the way, if we have any new people in the chat and you're not subscribed to Golden Blue Dude, if you're a college football fan and you're okay with a little sprinkle of NFL and college basketball, hit the like and subscribe button. We do videos every day. I don't miss a day. As far as live shows go, that's a different story, because my laptop is down and my phone is messed up, so it's hard to keep it charged. So I do as many as I can, but sometimes I just don't have enough charge to do a live show. Good news, though. I am getting a new phone. Hopefully this weekend. We're going to try to get a new phone this weekend. I really, really need it. I know I said this yesterday, but I did not realize how big of a pain. Let me rephrase that. I did not realize how big of a comfort it is to be able to plug in your phone and charge it. Driving, all you got to do, plug it in, you're good to go. Well, my charging port over here, the sensor went out. I don't know what caused it, but there's this sensor that says moisture detected, and it will not let you charge through the cord. So I have to charge it wirelessly. Try doing that in the car. Your phone slides. I mean, unless you have something that can hold it on there, locked down, it's going to slide all over the place and then slide in between the seat. It's just a pain. It's just a pain. All right. So, new phone coming. I'll actually be able to charge it. And with taxes, we're going to get a new laptop. And we're redoing the background. So Golden Blue Dude is going through some major changes right now because we had a really, really good year. And it's all thanks to you guys. I really, really appreciate it, guys. I don't know about you guys, but I've had a good time this evening talking with you guys about, basically conference realignment. We've talked about some other things. Somebody raised a question, which I'm going to do a video on, but I want to talk about it real quick. The 4 new teams coming into the Big 12, which one do I think is the best coming in, and which one do I think will do the best in the future? Okay, so the best one coming in my opinion, is BYU. BYU is already used to playing Power 5 competition. They do play some Group of 5, but the majority of their conference is Power 5. They're used to traveling. So I think the transition for BYU into the Big 12 is going to be fairly seamless. The team that I think will have the most issues, and this is going to sound crazy, I actually think it's going to be Cincinnati. I know. They are the only Group of 5 as of right now, the only Group of 5 team to ever make the playoffs. That's going to change because the playoffs are expanding to 12, and a Group of 5 team will be guaranteed to make the playoffs because the top 6 champions automatic bid. All right, so that will change. But as of right now, they are the only Group of 5 team that has ever made the playoffs. So it kind of sounds crazy that I'm saying that I think Cincinnati will struggle the most. The reason I'm saying that is because they just lost Luke Fickell, and that is a major, major deal. As much as I don't like Dana Holgerson, I do think that's more secure than breaking in a new head coach. And then, of course, Gus Malzahn over at UCF. I think he's going to do fine in the Big 12. I really do. He had a lot of success at Auburn in the SEC. Never had a losing season. Got them to a national championship. Won the SEC West a bunch of times over Alabama. He knows what he's doing. So the team that I think is the strongest coming in and will do fine right out of the gates, or the best right out of the gates, BYU. The team that I think will struggle the most right out of the gates, Cincinnati, because they're having to break in a new head coach. Luke Fickell is off to Wisconsin. Now, as far as long-term goes, UCF is going to do the best. Okay? Here's why. UCF is one of the fastest-growing brands out there. UCF has the largest on-campus student body. UCF has the financial backing of Disney, who owns ESPN, who has a major TV deal with the SEC. I think UCF could eventually end up in the SEC just because of their connections to Disney/ESPN. I really do think so. But it's just all the other stuff that leads me to believe that I think that UCF will have the most success out of any of the 4 long-term in the Big 12. I know that's also a little strange to say because they're kind of isolated down there in the state of Florida, so their travel might be the most brutal out of everybody. I understand that, but I think their recruiting is going to go through the roof when they join the Big 12. They're already in a hotbed as far as recruiting goes, and that's just going to make it even hotter. And I also think that the Big 12 will be able to get some teams of the ACC because I truly believe that those 8 teams do exist and they will vote to dissolve the ACC. Maybe they're waiting on a pitch because I heard that ESPN is talking about, they're not actually doing it yet, but they're talking about renegotiating the TV deal with the ACC. So maybe those 8 teams are sitting back and going, all right, hold on. Before we vote, let's see what ESPN has to say. But I don't think that they'll have enough money to do so. So they'll vote to dissolve, and then I think the Big 12 will be able to get Syracuse, Pitt, Louisville, and probably Miami. And Miami will give them a travel partner, plus those other teams give them more of an East Coast presence as well. So instead of just being Western heavy, they'll be more balanced. I think that also will help UCF as well. The biggest question mark would be Houston with Dana Holgerson. He had some success at West Virginia, but his most successful season was 2016 when we had a 10-win season. Everybody remembers 2018 with Will Grier and David Sills, but he actually had the most success in 2016 with Skylar Howard and running the spread. That's why I'm kind of excited about West Virginia's offense this year, because we're going back to the spread, and West Virginia has always had the most success when we ran a spread offense. So I think he'll have some success in the Big 12, but I have Houston kind of in the middle as far as the teams that will have the most success and have the least success. I think UCF will be number 1. I'm talking long term, okay? I think UCF will be number 1. I think BYU will be number 2. I think Houston could be 3 or 4 between. It's going to be between Houston and Cincinnati because I don't think Cincinnati will ever be able to get another look pickle. That was a gift. They made the most out of it. I'll give it to them. They made the most out of it. I don't know. I don't know. It's more of the, I guess, the fear of the unknown that makes me hesitant about Cincinnati having success. Breaking in a new coach, that's never good in your first year in a Power 5 conference. You talk about bad timing. That is bad timing. I actually agree with you, Brent. Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, NC State, the SEC, yes. And then not quite sure about Virginia Tech. It depends on AU status. I'm banking on they don't get it or it's too late, so Virginia Tech, the SEC. Agree. Florida State, Virginia Tech, NC State, and Clemson to the SEC. I have North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, and Georgia Tech going to the Big Ten. And I have Syracuse, Pitt, Louisville, and the Miami Hurricanes going to the Big 12. That is my official breakdown. That is my prediction whenever all that happens. Somebody saying Houston with a 9-win season. Well, the schedules came out yesterday, and let's look over that for Houston. So let's look at that Kevin Wood 8-9 game win season for Houston. All right, first game UTSA at home. I agree, that's a win. At Rice, that should be a win as well. TCU at home. TCU didn't have a good defense last year. They're not going to have a good defense this year. They lose a large majority of their offense, but they also recruit at a high level. I'm going to put that as a half as far as, a coin flip. So we'll probably have another half, and that will equal a win. But right now we're looking at 2 wins. Sam Houston, that's a win. At Texas Tech, sorry, that's a loss. Texas Tech is going to be really, really good, and that's on the road. You're still at 3 wins. West Virginia at home, that's the other half. So I'll put a half there. So that equals another win. So we're at 4 wins. Texas at home. No. Sorry. I know it's a home game. You're not beating Texas. Texas is going to be Big 12 contenders. At Kansas State. No. At Baylor. No. Cincinnati. Yes. Oklahoma State. Yes. At UCF. No. I see Houston going 6-6. And that's even, splitting TCU and West Virginia. They could very well lose both those games, but I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say you'll win 1, you'll lose 1, and Houston is at 6-6. You draw sort of a tough schedule. Your road games are pretty brutal. Your most winnable road game in the Big 12 is UCF. However, you kind of lucked out at the same time because you only had 4 road trips in the Big 12. West had 5, 6 total. So next year, Houston will have 5 road trips in the Big 12. So I'll tell you, you better make the most of it this year because you're going to have more road trips in the Big 12 next year. It's going to be a little more rough. We might do that. This is an idea. So, and not just from the Big 12, but for me, here on out with the live shows, we'll do a not an in-depth type of thing, but more like based on their schedule. I might do season predictions for each team per live show to wrap it up. We'll call it the prediction wrap up at the end. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's next live show. Let's do UCF. We'll do UCF next live show. But anyways, guys, I got to run. I got to get my kids to school early in the morning, do that whole ordeal. But I had a great time. This was a pretty good show. We had a pretty good turnout. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out, guys. It'll help get the video more views. And those of you watching the replay, you also don't forget to hit the like button as well because, yes, it helps the video. And in the off season, I'm telling you, we appreciate all the support during the regular season. Of course, it's amazing. It's awesome. Business is booming. But I'm telling you, in the off season, that's when we really, really need you because business does go down. So we appreciate all the support that you guys can give. Anyways, that's it for tonight's live show. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their hump day. And remember, guys, it's all downhill because the weekend is just around the corner. Stay tuned for regular videos tomorrow, and we'll see if we can squeak in another live show tomorrow. Just depends on if I can keep charge on my cell phone. Golden Blue Dude is out.